What's up, guys? If you know about my video of argumentation ethics, then you'll know how aggression will be defined, and you'll know multiple other, you'll know about what I mean by aggressive coercion. So yes, you'll know what that means. Those particular things mean, actually, is what I meant to say. You'll know what they are, you'll know what they mean, you'll know how how I roll. So, yeah. So, now that we've gotten there, let's roll forward, shall we? Episode 3, Part 2 of Hoppe for Dumbasses, Covenant Communities. Again, I'm going to address the issue that Cyan, the last I heard, Trudonian anarcho-technocrat that was not willing to aggress upon private property owners and people who want to be their own capitalistic, be their own capitalists, and hire people upon their, voluntary agreement. Last I heard. That's true. It's still true. He's still pretty fucking based as far as I'm concerned. Wish more were like that, but what can you do? Whew. Now, as I said, the only ways you can group together beyond a family unit or network of family units would be a formal community or a covenant-backed community, whether it be a leftist one or the more realistic one, a covenant private law community. I would argue it's more realistic. You'd have to sign up to join by going over the initial covenant contracts. And if you you should have the ability to opt out. Again, I've talked about opting out in multiple ways in Part 1, addressing what Shane Killian said to Executioner in one of his Q&As. I'll link that video below. And the timestamp. So yeah, I've had a shitty morning and a long day yesterday. If the RCC is trying to turn themselves into states or are being subverted into an attempted formation of a new state, and I don't mean some so-called lib-left, or as I bluntly call the vast majority of them, because genuinely liberty advocating lib-left are so rare they barely make a fraction of a statistic, so I don't mention them, because the ones that outnumber them, I openly call commie, tanky fuck light. If you want to know what voluntary means, you need to test it yourself. Read Auburn, Herbert, and Rothbard. Have a crash course in basic human interaction again. Or get your head fucking examined. I mean it too, I'm serious. You might as well, for fuck's sakes. I don't mean them screeching it. I mean actually trying to become a monopoly of governing institutions and use of force in a defensive or a law enforcing way, law and order. With law enforcement, law making, decision making, and aggressive, coercive power that's claimed to be legitimized coercive power. And yeah, I mean these actual implications of actually becoming a fucking state. Now, I define a state again as this: a central ruling political organization or governing body over a territory or a bunch of territories in any society that has the absolute monopoly of lawmaking, law enforcing, decision making, and tries to maintain this with the monopoly of force and violence. In particular, it is the only organization in society that not only allows no appeal above and beyond itself, but also obtains its funding not by voluntary means like contracts or autonomous agents, whatever agents can use to physically sign up or choose to pay it to for services, but instead by aggression, in other words, the unsolicited, unprovoked initiation of force upon another to do what they want to do. And aggression is backed by the coercion that's backed by aggression that is arbitrarily claimed to be legitimate coercion by the so-called society's various highly autonomous, self-aware, or intelligence-capable agents. And I'm going to show why I don't conflate the word government or equivocate government with the state. And Stefan Kinsella beautifully summarizes that in this little clip right here.
Number one, what's our debate? Our debate is about government, limited government, right? Whether we're in favor of that or not. Now, I would just say quickly, I have a disagreement with the way the debate is framed because people like Jan, I won't accuse Jan of this, but people on his side will equivocate. Equivocate means to use words in two different ways, in a dishonest way. So if I say I am against government, then these people will say you're against the governing institutions of society. In other words, you're against law and order. And if I say, well, no, I'm an anarchist, but I'm for law and order, then they say, well, you're for government, so you're contradicting yourself. So what they do is they have a loaded term called government, and they equate it with the state when it's convenient for them. So I don't want to go there, and I think Jan has actually been pretty clear about this in his definition of the state. So I think Jan's definition of the government is similar to what I would define the state as. As an anarchist, I oppose the state because the state is the monopolized institution or agency of force in a given geographic region. Okay, and I think that's what Jan is in favor of. Now, I don't think Jan can justify this because if you are opposed to aggression as a general matter, which libertarians do, okay, no, aggression means, and let me note, it does not mean coercion, it does not mean force, it doesn't mean violence, because defensive force and force used in restitution can be justified according to libertarians. So we're not against force, we're against aggression, or as Ayn Rand called it, the initiation of force, right? Or as libertarians explain, we are against the uninvited or unconsented to use of someone else's physical property that is invading the boundaries of their property. That is what we mean by opposing aggression.
Now that we're done playing that, let's continue on. Sorry, Liblef, you've got wicked issues on your principles. Because the vast majority of your fucking crypto tankies, and I'm going to call that right now, because y'all have some tanky-ass implications. Yeah, a lot of your so-called lib lefties like to use the state a little too much to be considered lib left, and they peddle authoritarianism, lenient lies, peddle stated aggression and coercion required policies, and many other problems. Too goddamn many. Atomist individualists and collectivists both are cringe to me. Then again, I've learned enough about communitarianism and how humans work that a lot of those assumers are cringe to me. They lead down rabbit holes I've read into and I refuse to fucking follow. But anyways, if this statism attempt were to dare to happen in a CC, as unlikely as it is, there are multiple things you have to defend yourself. Then you have huge economic problems. And well, here's my list of defenses you have for your favor should a CC, an HOA, or whatever try to become a state. Non-aggression principle, and due to such, that leads to the ability to defend your self-ownership and your property rights by bearing arms. That's another expression of those rights of life and property at work. You can swap them out with the self-ownership principle. There to change it with this case. The expression of it's the right to bear arms. Right to property can be enforced in favor of. You've got private military contractors. You have communal funded military contractors. You have private cops. You have, communally co-funded cops, security cops. Conkin's counter-econ and agorist philosophy minus the lefty bullshit that he peddled, and the advocacy for theft. You can physically remove, or for the tamer terms, ostracize and disassociate authoritarianism peddlers and their property from your community, since you have to be principled in this. You can physically remove them from your community. In this case, I'm pretty sure that would be considered a bad behavior in many a decent kinship-centered covenant contract. Literally everything else that gated communities and homeowners associations do to ensure its fairness and protection in modern times without invoking the state. As long as the state doesn't strap down on them for being too independent. You know how the state is. It does it with everyone. HOAs and gated communities are not immune from it. 9. Absolutely non-court, absolutely private, funded courts or communally funded courts. Contractual law enforcement, tort law enforcement, torts. Admiralty law. Law merchants. Forming of localized militias that can utilize and dissolve at any time. And 15 is a rant in and of itself. The expenses that would happen if one were to make an attempt at becoming a fucking warlord. The expenses in housing, bunkers, if your self-sufficiency in electricity, generation, ammunition, supplies, food, water, maintenance for each of these infrastructure. If you're going to go all that, if you're going to go, which ideally would be the sweet spot between full-blown autarky, wheelchairism, as I call it, and no self-sufficiency at all, which is the best. Doesn't go full autarky, but it still allows high self-sufficiency in a profitable manner and leave you an open market instead of a closed-off pseudo-market like autarky would lead to. If you don't know about that, it's down below as well. Factoring this in, just to factor in, just to add to this, right? Just to add to this, just to minimize wiggle room to fuck with this reputation. Well, we'll minimize the wiggle room for dishonest bullshitting, is what I'm doing here. That's why I'm listing these things. Anyways, continue on. The commanding structure provided by commanding officers that would, with an extreme high probability, charge a decent fee, since CEOs do not make decent militia or military contractor commanders. Due to all these factors, a company owner or syndicate owners, co-owners, or alt corp core owners, so co-owners would, as I would call these alternatives to the statist corporation institution, alt corps, would co-owners would be already out of funds trying to do this. When customers finding this out would leave already possibly bankrupting them. Then factor in using counter-econ. Exposés used to factually propagandize against what they're trying to do. A business partner, shareholders, and such will also most likely come to them if the dictator wannabe were to try these things, wanting their money or their hide, wanting their money back, or the wannabe dictators hide, etc., etc., etc. And even if all of these barriers were somehow bypassed, and you had Satan fingering your fucking you in the ass and be pulling you along like a puppet with some of his claws to help you pull all this off, and how to sidestep a lot of this being the manifestations of what I explained were ways Borsodi's law, the economic calculation problem, the knowledge problem, and the psychological incentives of survival, self-interest, basically, and knowledge problem showing up in your face. A lot of these. And Say's law really popping up in your face immediately. You're still going to be met with lawsuits and other counters due to what you're doing. So once you're saying you're trying to be a tyrant, attempt to ignore everyone else's first countermeasures, you'll still become a blacklist target for by the other arbiters, communities, and such due to your being a massive liability. You're an absolutely unnecessary liability to be levied against. And the moment they figure out where your infrastructures and bases are, they could threaten to strike you as the aggressor. Everything you know and they know you have, and kill you off as a threat, as an aggressor, a technical problem. They will deal with you. Should you go to these supertism levels, I'm just engaging this just to give you a scope here. Your bank accounts could be perma-frozen, and your own banking system could be nullified, as others will cash out of them. If you say just giving the possibility of you having one, a couple companies and their owners may show their truly rogue natures and help you out, but price markups, all the other stuff listed previously, will also cause Sage a lot of pop up and fiercely demand for people to arm themselves, paying for their own NPCs, communal mercs, local militias will skyrocket in general. Some may offer it for free and are extreme affordability out of wanting PR, and out of empathy, because empathy exists. Their own homes being involved, generosity, other kind of self-interest incentives. They'll join militias and advance the guerrilla warfare tactics, drones, and resistances. Let's throw drones in there while we're at it. Let's throw drone cobalt micro nuking while we're at it. Let's throw that in there. Let's really foobar your ass. Let's really foobar your ass on this. You'll run out of customer base just trying to do this in such statelessness. And they'll be suspect of you for trying to get all these things, since you can't keep the secret forever. If you try, something that large will attract attention pretty goddamn easily, and that's why conspiracy buffs are just as much sheeple as the rest of the masses that are believing in the state being a necessity for life. You'll bleed out revenue, and even if you didn't have all these problems, you'd still be fucking trying to conquer and claim land as you get nailed by these private courts, market socialist communal courts, voluntary technocratic institutions, various readily formed militias, property owners, defense agencies, Lib lefts to actually are for liberty. I'm giving you a cheat here. Listen up, fuck the few of you fuckers that are generally out there, and the like. And you could get crippled by the possibility of a blacklist before it could even be attempted, or a price control shooting up against your ass. This is why I hate the price gouging rhetoric. This is one of the many, many times a price control is very useful. You know something? The average person will, average fucking NPC in public will screech about. Yeah, you know, price gouging. Sorry, it's not an argument. The regressivists hate on it because they like to tell you what they want to tell you what you can do with your goods and services. Because they're fucking authoritarian piece of shit themselves, claim to be progressive. Yeah, back in the 20s, your pseudo-intellectualist movement in the UK and the States peddled for eugenics, pricks. You peddle the same policies the eugenicists did. Fuck you, pricks. And Jimmy Dore, you're a crazy piece of shit for blindly believing this bull. Fuck off. And I hate saying that because out of all the left, I tolerate Jimmy Dore. Out of most all the leftists out there that are complete state cucks, Jimmy Dore's the one I tolerate. But he blindly believes this crazy shit. Imagine if the entire, at least many stateless societies were like how the U.S. has been acknowledged for being like when it was still the U.S. Republic. Was it been acknowledged for many years in this quote by Isoroku Yamamoto. You cannot invade the mainland United States. There would be a rifle behind every blade of grass, and then this was which is the incentive for why authoritarians want to push gun control. So there won't be a rifle behind every blade of grass, so they can initiate control over everyone. Watch every so-called progressivist pull the denial copium about this and deny their authority and pull the "it's not authoritarian what I do it" bullshit the left's notorious for and always have been. Psychological material incentives are another thing to factor. I already listed those, a bunch of those, didn't I? You know, lack of a status corporate structure due to the state not existing. The many alternatives are altacorps that would not subvert property norms and control of property, right? Control of property, as well as massive open and freed up markets for various forms of armament. Would make this not only a possibility but a certainty. All these things are listed as well. At the very worst, these things would take place, and you're going to be Zapatista multiplied by Gaelic Ireland multiplied by the Visigoths, who were precursors to the covenant community model. Just like Lysander Spooner was, technically. That is, if you're technologically and financially sufficient enough to support yourselves, but also are willing to get good public relations through merit before such scenarios come to pass, which is still better in the long shot. The irony of this is when filthy heretic and esoteric entity were still considering themselves anarcho-capitalists before they went left-tard, they made the same argumentation and was genuine, but it was a bit more long-winded than me. And the funny thing is, this is that same defense you can use if a covenant community were to try to become a state. As hilariously preposterous as that notion is, I'm still going to say in good faith it's still a possibility, although a very, very tiny one, I would argue. I'm still engaging it and giving you this other part. Now, since I already talked about what covenant communities are, how they're a framework to make whatever kind of social organization you want, and ostracize those you don't like out, if you desire, by putting what you don't want in the contract to begin with, which minimizes people getting kicked out. Debunked Madonna and you know, the atomist individualist non-arguments against it. Already nuking warlords and also defended panarchy and polyarchy and the anarchist notions of the covenant community, which is again they are within voluntarism. I think you, which by the way, panarchy and polyarchy will allow varying degrees of minorly centralized governments of choice, the rights of governments of choice, and the same arguments can be said against the attempts to subvert panarchies and polyarchies into devolve them into statist systems as well, right? Anyway, thank you for watching. It's been a good one. I hope you I hope you learned something. I hope you learned how to nuke my warlords, peddlers, and other non-arguing fuckwits. And hopefully you learned more about covenant communities than you did before. Thank you for listening.